All right, good morning, everybody. Uh, Welcome to morning discussion here. Mark Sudduth with you. Election Day 2024. So we'll probably have four people tuning in. I saw an interesting post from Fox Weather, uh, and it was something about a newsroom, is it like a meme or something? He said all the newsrooms across America, it was just mountains of pizza boxes. And then Greg Diamond at Fox Weather said, um, basically weather departments across the country. And it was a guy, it was some meme or whatever. He's like, who cares? It's one of those days that, we came pretty close to having an election day hurricane with Rafael. I mean, hey, we got tropical storm out there. By the way, still dealing with all of this. It sounds worse than it is. Like, it's so aggravating, and there's just nothing you can do when you have an upper respiratory cold, an infection. It doesn't just go away. So that's a bummer. But I got the water to try to keep everything smooth. But boy, and it's funny because I should just do this later in the day because by the time we get to the afternoon, all of this usually clears up. It's just rather aggravating. So let's drop me out and share the screen, show you what we got going on here with Rafael. Then we're going to bring in our guest for today, somebody who's down there in Grand Cayman. We'll bring him in just a moment. Grand Cayman right there, Sister Islands over here, part of the Cayman Islands. First, there's Rafael, really starting to get better organized now, and get that curled up shape to it. Outflow well established, especially on the east side. And I think once it gets past Jamaica here, boy, it's really going to take off. Probably looking at a hurricane coming through the Cayman Islands. But Jamaica in that onshore flow right here, and you got the mountains that go through there. So probably some very heavy rain, the beautiful streams and waterfalls and all that going to be running hot after all this goes through. Close up for you, early morning visible high resolution. Let me just refresh the page to make sure we have the latest frames. Yeah, Raphael starting to get better organized, and again gonna pass close to Jamaica with the center, but the center, the winds are like 60, 65, whatever. That's not the concern. Look at that right there, this last frame. In fact, let me pause it on there. Look at that big tower cumulonimbus cloud sitting right over Jamaica. Very, very heavy rain under something like that. That is the big concern. There's another one right there. You see those huge tops to these clouds, convective bands that are coming through. There's another one there about to come in. And all of that just focusing right in on Jamaica. Very, very heavy rain. That's a big concern down there. And then put this back into motion, hopefully. This will all keep moving on toward the eastern side of the Cayman Islands over here. There's Grand Cayman there. Got Georgetown sitting in there. I've been there, went there in July. I met with Adam, who I'm going to bring on in just a minute. Um, was thinking about going down for this, but apparently the airport's going to close pretty soon. So I would have had to have left yesterday. And it's a tough call. These are some small targets. And, Raphael, not particularly strong, not particularly large. Plus, we got Adam down there. He's got a couple of our GoPro cams that we set him up with. He's going to put those out and see what impacts we capture. So at least we got that. Radar out of the Cayman Islands. This is pretty cool to see some of the rain bands just starting to move into the region. And you can zoom in just a little bit and see how Grand Cayman itself is doing. The worst of the weather still, of course, way off to the east. And I really like this too because you can slide it over and see how the sister islands are faring. And I think what I'm going to do later is probably around noon or 2 in the afternoon, somewhere, just a couple hours, out after the models come out this morning, the 12Z runs. I think I'm just going to set up a YouTube live using Zoom here and just cycle through. I'll be around. Obviously, I'm going to be watching the election results coming in. And every once in a while, I'll just change the extent here and we'll just stream the Cayman radar live. Why not? Just something to watch while we're waiting for the votes to be tallied, right? See, I told you, once I start talking, it's like warming up a muscle. I'm getting better. It's funny how that works. It really is. I swear I should do a morning jog, and I'll probably come in and sound like, "Hi, I'm Mark Sudduth. Good to see you." I mean, it's just weird how that works. But anyway, radar starting to get a little bit more active, and we'll be able to watch this as Rafael gets closer to the Cayman Islands, and we can see what kind of structure the core might have. So before I get into some of the modeling, let me stop screen sharing just for a minute. And let's go back over to YouTube real quick to see who's on. I like the comparison to a what you call it, a lecture hall. And right now I got 92 people in my lecture hall, so it's good to see you guys. All right. So, um, 92 folks. There's Adam on the YouTube chat. So, Adam, you're also on the Zoom with me. So, if you'll unmute your microphone, please, sir. Say hello to the world, Mr. McDoom. Oh, the cat's here.
Yeah. Hello, world. Hello, cat.
Cat one. I left the office door open today, and look what happens.
Mm, yeah.
So, Adam, you're down
Ah,
in Grand Cayman. Uh,
yes, indeed.
what are things like down there? What are people thinking? You guys are no stranger to hurricanes. What's the mood?
Well, yeah, no, not at all. Again, when it comes to hurricanes and Cayman, it's like two old pals meeting with each other.
Sure.
It's a common occurrence here, very common,
Yeah,
and
more so than I
yeah.
thought too. When we got
Oh,
together
yeah.
in July, you really enlightened me
Mm,
on the history of tropical cyclones coming through the Cayman Islands. Either they get their start nearby or they come through already formed.
yeah.
But yes, anyway, continue. Yes, very, very.
Yeah, so yeah, I think we're very well versed in what these tropical cyclones can do here, and yeah, we're all just prepared for it. We know generally speaking what we've got coming. Of course, there are some possible variances that may change the game a bit, and we're closely monitoring that. But we do have, in terms of our planning and our preparations, it's kind of crazy. It's like we got redundancies for redundancies and redundancies for redundancies.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
we're pretty
Layers.
well covered with that. Um, Seeing a November hurricane, it is, certainly something that we've had seen. As a matter of fact, it's quite funny how the system is coming in at around this time when it's actually coming up close to the anniversary of Hurricane Paloma, so it's of 2008, which absolutely devastated Cayman Brac, also impacted Grand Cayman as well, and also more significantly, that of the infamous 1932 hurricane, which again the anniversary for that is also uh, in early November, and that was a Category 5 hurricane. I do believe the only November Category 5 hurricane officially stated on record. Now, of course, you have that conversation all the time. I have that conversation all that time about record keeping, and oh yeah, that could have been before that. But at least on official records, the 32 storm was the only known Category 5 hurricane in November in that time. Um,
Wow.
that certainly one that impacted us quite significantly. That one was known to be one of the deadliest for Cayman. We had over 100 killed in that 32 storm. Of course, the infrastructure back in 1932 compared to now, substantially different, but you know, we certainly learn from our history and we make plans to better ourselves going forward. So, in preparations for this, as I'm sure you and all of the viewers know, that we are under a hurricane warning for this system. Um, Again, as of the current projections, it is looking like the core may pass over or close to our sister islands, Little Cayman or Cayman Brac. Um, Again, this is something that we're going to have to monitor very closely. The one thing about dealing with hurricanes and tropical cyclones in the island is that I know that in general speaking, people don't really fuss too much about little wobbles here and there, but when you are dealing with these small islands, these wobbles, either left or right, in its movement can have a potential significant impact change on, what islands get the worst of the impact. So we're going to be monitoring this extra closely as we go forward to get any shift a little bit to the west could bring more significant impacts to Grand Cayman, less impacts to the Sister Islands. Further moving to the east, be great news for Grand Cayman. A little bit better news for Cayman Brac, not so great news for Little Cayman. Um, and of course, not great news for Cuba. So we're going to be watching things. Shelters have opened up, um, and we are looking at people piling into those. Regardless of whatever wind impacts, rainfall impacts is going to be a big issue with this. And of course, as you saw when you were here, Mark, it's a pretty flat island, and
Yeah.
there's even several areas that are below sea level. So even even a little bit of rain can cause a bit of an issue for some areas. And considering how moisture laden the islands have been from the last several storms impacting the island, um, the grounds are very saturated, so a little bit of rain can cause quite a bit of an issue. So we're looking at that carefully, especially for residents that are in low-lying areas. The other thing is storm surge impacts and wave heights. Again, we are looking at wave heights up to 13 feet. And of course, that will bring the coastal flooding risk and being on an island and one that is low-lying, the risk of the beach erosion is a very serious issue that we do have here and that we're all very concerned about. So that's something that we're taking very much into consideration
Well,
as
and
we
I'm
go.
looking through the hurricane models, and the H wharf gets it pretty close to the sister islands, as does the HAFS A. HAFS A is a little bit stronger in the mid to low 970s, just depending on how that core starts to ramp up. And
Oh,
it looks like a pretty small system overall. And then it approaches Cuba, of course. And then pretty much all of the model guidance does suggest some of those bands could affect the lower keys. That's why they have the tropical storm watch. I
yeah,
believe it's still just a watch for those areas. The Halves A gets it down to 949 just east of the Isle of Youth there, right before landfall in Cuba, and then into the Gulf of Mexico. So we could see a hurricane in the Gulf. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the hurricane models at least seem to keep the worst of it away from Grand Cayman. All three are in general agreement on that scenario. How many people live over there on Cayman Brac and Little Cayman?
on Cayman Brac. not too sure on the numbers, but I do know that we did a new survey assessment of people on the islands. I know that in terms of Grand Cayman, you're looking at 85 plus thousand persons on Grand Cayman. When it comes to Cayman Brac, I think we're running about uh, over, I think it's over 1900, 1900 something odd,
Yeah, I'm
I
looking
believe,
at
for Cayman
the
Brac.
Google satellite view of it and doesn't look too populated, so I guess
Yep.
that's good. But you got Long Beach up there and nice little beach road and quaint little island. It looks lovely over there. You got the parrot reserve. A lot of parrots over there, a lot of birds.
Yes, yes, indeed. And matter of fact, we one of our national birds, the Cayman parrot, it's sort of unique to the Cayman Islands. We do have a number of wildlife that is actually quite unique to the islands. Of course, parrots are one of them. The other is the blue iguana, which
Yeah.
again you could only find in Grand Cayman. Um, but yeah, so there are quite a few very rare species of animals and plant life that you can find in the islands here. And yeah, in terms of Little Cayman, in terms of population, even more secluded, with only about 160 uh, persons in Little Cayman. So very, very secluded for Little Cayman.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, um both the well, all three of the hurricane models um suggest that, and I was drawing on it while you were talking and I had my labeling wrong. So Little Cayman is closest to you. Cayman
Yes,
Brac is farthest from you. It's the
it
eastern.
is the furthest. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So it looks like if the hurricane models are spot on, that the center could come over Little Cayman. So as you said, the wobbles are going to matter. If it
Mm,
wobbles a little bit more to the east, it could go right over both of them.
yep.
And if it goes a little bit more to the west, it puts you guys closer to some of that stronger wind. But it looks like a pretty small system overall. And then all the models do get it into the Gulf
Mm,
and keep it as a hurricane for a decent amount of time. And then the dry air. I want to show people this. This is really remarkable. Here's the GFS, a global model. This is the 5,000 foot vorticity comes in and then just kind of makes landfall in Mississippi Alabama border as a shadow of its former self. And a real big reason why. Let's look at it down here when the GFS has it right over the sister islands. And let's look at the precip and the moisture. Adam was telling me about this yesterday. No dry air down where you are, that's for sure. And you'd expect that in the Caribbean, but watch what happens, folks. It comes up into the Gulf, and then the dry air is just waiting for it. That mid-level dry air where you have humidity values that are quite low, below 50%, any of that brown, and that's just not going to do it. You're going to drop the thermodynamic profile substantially when you get that dry air, and it just collapses. Look at that. It just goes away. And that's just the time of year it is. It's just the way it goes. Then you got those strong southwesterly winds that are going to come in and help to inject that dry air in there. That is why it is very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult to get a hurricane to make landfall in the United States in November. We had Kate in 1985 that did so, but it's really, really rare. But down in the Caribbean, where Adam is, and we got Jamaica down there, that's a different story. The dry air hasn't quite worked down there, but if you take this all the way out to 2 weeks, the dry air is coming. Look at that big old, look at that. I mean, that's a lot of brown. So that'll start to shut the hurricane season down permanently as we get towards the end of the month. Well, anything else you want to add before I let you go, sir?
Uh, yeah, there's something that did pop up in terms of the NHC discussions and something that we're monitoring quite closely, and something else that came to mind when you mentioned also the size of the system. So it's interesting to know that the environmental conditions in the Caribbean are, you know, quite conducive for a fair bit of strengthening. We got that record highs in surface temperatures, the high ocean heat content, low wind shear. Again, as you pointed out there, the abundance of moisture in the area.
Mm.
Um, we note that there are various rapid intensification indices on a lot of model guidance that are showing a significant chance of rapid intensification over the next couple of days.
Right.
And the National Hurricane Center also notes that in terms of their short-term forecast, that they could very well be conservative on the current forecast, and they
Sure.
may need to up that. And again, this is why it's vitally important for the recon missions that are going out there. Thankfully, we seem to have some back-to-back recon missions going out there, which is mightily helpful, and a lot of that gets injected into the model, so that'll help out greatly. So the other thing too is that with a very quickly intensifying system, what can and usually tends to happen is eye wall replacement cycles, and with that, that can also uh, expand the size of the system a little bit. So that is something that we're going to have to also take into consideration if indeed the system does take off and has that rapid intensification. That is something that we're going to have to consider again for the Cayman Islands, Cuba,
Yeah.
and that opens up the possibility that if we do have a little bit of a larger system, a bit of a stronger system, whilst yes, that dryer will ultimately cause the demise of the system, it may end up being, a little bit longer lived, a little bit stronger as it gets a little bit deeper into the Gulf of Mexico. So that is something that we also have to consider, and this is why we're going to have to closely monitor what it does over the next couple of days.
Yeah. And I think too, if it is stronger, and when they're stronger, they're deeper into the atmosphere, like they're it's like when you have a small sailboat with a small sail versus uh, even a small sailboat with a big sail, it reaches higher up. And so the steering is different when
Mhm,
these tropical cyclones are deep in the atmosphere. You get that deep convection. And so if it's stronger earlier, it might tend to be a little bit more east. Because what happens
mhm,
is you see in the GFS here, it does start to shove west a little bit, and that's because it's starting to lose that deep convection, and so it's being pushed more by the low and mid-level flow. But I think if it's deeper in the atmosphere and it maintains its intensity longer, it could come in a little bit more east and possibly avoid some of that dry air just a little bit longer. So literally what happens in the Caribbean is going to help to dictate to some extent what happens in the Gulf of Mexico. So an interesting 2 days ahead for sure. So I appreciate you joining in with us, man. It's good to talk with you, and
absolutely. Always a pleasure.
stay in touch about it. And you can send me some video, and I can share it, and so forth. And we'll
Yep,
probably stream that radar. Like I said, I'll just probably put it up and just
absolutely.
stream it, and then see
Yep.
what's happening, and then um, we'll know by tomorrow. It should be passing through.
Yes, definitely. And yes, we also want to extend our thanks and gratitude to you and the Hurricane Track team for the GoPro boxes, which
Yeah.
again are going to be very helpful. We are going out in the next couple hours here and deploy those boxes. We got a couple of areas that we're looking at getting them to uh, possibly one of them on the western side of Grand Cayman, the other one on potentially the eastern side of Grand Cayman. We were hoping to get one of them off to the BRAC. However, the airport, as mentioned, is closing earlier than we had expected, so we're unable to get that over there to the BRAC. But hey, you know what? It's one of those things. Maybe next time we'll be able to get that over there.
Well, yeah, this is good practice, and I think you're going to meet up with Kelsey down there. Have you ever met her before?
I do believe that this will be our first meet, and I'll be quite happy to do so. But yeah, it'll be great. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I noticed that she tagged us on the Twitter there, bird nerd, photographer, and most importantly, weather enthusiast.
Mhm.
Kelsey Ray Smith down there in Grand Cayman. Tell her I
Yep,
said hello. And
absolutely, will do. Will do.
when my wife and I are down there in December, well, maybe the four of us can get a snack somewhere. Yeah, we'll
Absolutely,
figure it out. Having more contacts down there, the better.
absolutely. That's definitely. And hopefully, one of these days we'll finally get you down here for an intercept mission. One of these days.
Yeah, and all this stuff we're doing now, think about it. All this, I mean, I came down in July. There was a couple times you set some stuff up since then. And then, by the way, the GoPros he's talking about, there's these small cases, and they have a little battery in there that'll run these for about 30 hours. And that was donated by our whole community. I took those down in person in July to really get the Cayman Islands prepared for, because it's just a matter of time for the next really serious landfall where we can have this recorded 4K video of what happens. It won't be live. Now, if I go down there in the future, I'll take Starlink with me, and of course, we'll be live then. And we're working on some unique things with Starlink where we can even match up some cameras to it and not just have me on, but actual live cameras. We're working on it. All kinds of cool stuff coming up, but finally got down there this past July. Got to meet Adam and hang out with him and his father and get a tour of the island. And I was only there for one day, but it left such a an impression on me that my wife and I are going to go back in December on a Royal Caribbean cruise and say hello again. So, you know, at least this particular, at least Raphael is not going to rearrange things. It could certainly be worse.
Oh yes, definitely.
All right. Well, Adam, I will talk to you later, and that'll pretty much wrap up this session, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I will have an afternoon update, of course, and we'll know a lot more with what's happening with Raphael and the rest of the tropics. And all of this while we are keeping an eye on a very important election here in the United States. I'm sure you guys are watching that very keenly down in the Cayman Islands as well. Pretty much the whole world is focused on our political shenanigans over here, and I think that's a good way to put it. Luckily, the weather shenanigans are not going to play a role this time around, which is fine because we have enough to deal with the political side of things. So I really appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to tune in. Adam, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to everybody later. All right, I guess that'll do it.
All
I,
right.
I
Yeah,
didn't
no, that's
I
great.
didn't have a proper sign off, so we'll cue it up again. Adam,
Yeah,
thank you for joining me. We'll talk to everybody later. Have a good rest of your
yeah,
day. Thanks, Adam.
yeah. Absolutely a pleasure.
All right, bye
Yeah.
everybody. I'll see you later today.